Welcome to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast. Sit back and listen to interviews, discussion about books, and anything else literary. There's always something or someone new on the show. Good evening, listeners. I'm Amy, and welcome to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast. Today we're joined by an author. Please introduce yourself and let the audience know how they can connect with you.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for having me on tonight. My name's Cam Torrens, and I can be reached on my website at camtorrens.com or on Facebook, my author page, Cam Torrens Writer.
Great, and that information will also be in the description of this appearance when it goes live. So, first, I am really delighted to have you on my show. So what book will you be talking about today?
Well, I'm going to talk about Havoc, Trouble on the Trail, and this is the fifth book in the Tyler Zahn series that I write, and it releases on December 18th, so in just a couple months. I'm very excited about it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So how long have you been writing?
I started writing about a month before COVID started in 2020. I had no idea it was coming. It turned out to be one of the small or few bright things about the epidemic was that I had the time to learn a lot. But I had been retired for a couple years after a 30-year career in the Air Force and a lifelong reader. Pardon me.
Thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've been a lifelong reader, and I finally decided that I wanted to see if I could write something that was close to some of the great books that I'd read over the years. And I quickly found out it was harder than I expected.
Yeah, it's not always easy. But the more you write, the more it gets easier. And then sometimes it stops getting easy for a while, and then it gets easy again. So you said this is part of a series?
It is. The books in the Tyler Zahn series, they can stand alone, but time-wise, sequentially, this is number 5 in the series. So nice. Tyler Zahn, my protagonist, he also is retired from the Air Force. He's a bit younger than I am. He had a harder go during his service time and chasing a few demons when he got out. And so he retired into the Colorado Rockies, hoping to kind of find himself again. And he joined Search and Rescue in the hopes of trying to give back to his new community. But he just keeps stumbling onto bad guys and bad situations and trying to work his way through that.
Yeah, it's a shame when that happens. Everywhere you turn, there's a bad guy now.
Right. But I do real world search and rescue here in Chaffee County, and fortunately, we very rarely run into the bad guys. It's just pulling lost hikers or injured hikers out of the wilderness.
Well, that also, I'm sure, is a rewarding job. That's pretty amazing. And so you are writing from basically experience, and that, experience can trump research. But I'm impressed, and I can't wait to actually read all of your books. I always recommend to authors or to readers that if there's a book in a series and maybe you just found out about it, but there's books before it, always start with the first one and work your way through. And you get to see how the author writes. Sometimes series, they have, they're all focused around one main character. Sometimes they're different stories, but there's a theme. But I always recommend that people start from book 1 and move forward. You also see the growth in the author's writing and, how characters are, you know a lot about the characters because you've read their backstory, or you meet new characters because the character's meeting somebody new.
Yeah, I think you got a great point there because, each book has a character arc, but you're right. If you start at that beginning, you really get to see, not just a character arc over a novel, but kind of over a period of time.
Oh, definitely. Even when written, I've written a lot of, book series, and before I write, or I would sit down to write, I would go back from the beginning and read. It didn't matter if there was 30 or 5 books ahead of it before I started really getting down, so I could get back into that character, find, see how they worked, and you can kind of get that. And you don't miss anything, because sometimes you can miss something when you're writing a sequel. So it's not always easy.
No, I saw that you have quite a body of work there that you've written. You've been at this for longer than I am, but I enjoyed listening to you read a passage from one of your first books for the town in Arizona. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. I really, that was my first book that I wrote, and then I was going to make a trilogy, and then 20 years later, it's got 67 volumes, and then I'm like, yeah, it's okay. And I think I can end it now, but I've kind of switched over to writing nonfiction local history from where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
And I also trying my hand at writing children's books, just to kind of, keep it up. I've been writing some articles for the local historical society, and that kind of got my ideas more. And I'm like, okay, I wrote a book about like everything, and now I'm gonna make my next book about the people who lost, mourned, the people that time forgot. So that's my next project, and that's what I've been working on now. But I go back to first book I wrote because I did a lot of research, and just to see if I find more information, and I usually do. So I like that.
That's great. You're an inspiration. I started off writing this fiction series, but I've got some ideas about nonfiction that I've actually started working on, but I haven't made the step yet. So you're motivating me.
Well, good. And if you ever need any help with anything, or you have a question when you start it, you're welcome to email me. I'm on every author's speed dial, so to speak.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything I can do to help, so I do.
Thanks.
So your protagonist, what is he like? He sounds like he's like, he's kind of a guy put together, but he's also has, probably demons, and I don't know if PTSD or whatever. But is there, there's got to be more to him than what he's experienced. So, can you give a little sneak preview into what he might be encountering in your next book?
I can, yeah. So when the series started, he was facing a confidence crisis. I mentioned trouble that he'd had coming out of the Air Force, and he'd also lost his family as far as the relationship that he had with them. So really suffering from a confidence crisis, and he works through a lot of that in the first couple of books, and then he moves towards reconnecting with his daughter. That's a step because he had a confidence crisis in relationships as well. It seemed like every time that he got into a relationship, trouble seemed to follow. And on this particular book, he's really torn because when he's got his confidence back, he's moved from being a search and rescue member to also being a reserve deputy sheriff in the county. And his two people he loves the most, his girlfriend, FBI agent Emma Fraser, and his daughter, Daria, are hiking the Colorado Trail together. And the book opens with a Black Hawk helicopter crashing in the mountains, not far away from where the people he loves the most are hiking. And
Oh,
the book kind of goes, from there.
wow. That sounds really interesting. I can't wait to read it. Actually, I can't wait to read all 5 of them. So definitely on my to read list.
That's great. I'm really excited about it coming out. It's gotten a great reception, on the early reads. So
That's really great. Yeah, I'm really happy for you. I think it's wonderful. When and you are writing from some experiences, but do you also like do some research if there's something that you're not sure of, or something, maybe a policy or something has changed that might affect your characters?
I do. I've had so many stories of, where I tried to write something and I'm still in the, pre-publication phase, and I discover that, I'll talk with somebody. I'm like, oh my gosh, I almost put that book out there with having that part completely wrong. And so I've gotten more and more, into the research. I'm, done with my first draft on book 6 now, and I've had to sit down with some, river rafting experts because, it's got some search and rescue on the river on this one. But the book we're talking about, Havoc, it's got that Black Hawk helicopter going down. And when I was in the Air Force, I flew a few times in the Black Hawk as a passenger, but it's not a normal Air Force aircraft, like what I
Right.
flew. And, so I ended up talking to a couple Black Hawk pilots and, in detail to get that all right, because I had a lot of the stuff wrong about helicopter ops. But, a funny story, neither one of them, did we ever talk about slang. And in my book, a couple of times, like 26 times in that book, I referred to the helicopter as a chopper,
Right.
which, is a common term I've heard for a helicopter. So get this, Amy, I'm running on the treadmill listening to an audio book by Catherine Center, a romantic comedy, called The Love Haters. And, I usually do about one of these romantic comedies a month, as kind of off genre because I think they're funny. And she's fallen for this Coast Guard rescue guy, and he's lecturing her about, they never call, military aircraft choppers in the military. That's a police term. And I'm like, what? Thinking to myself. And, when I'm done with my run, I go look that up. And sure enough, I call up my, Army guys that gave me the research on the Black Hawk, and they're like, oh no, we never call it a chopper.
Call it Hilo.
Right. They call it either the aircraft, the bird, or the helicopter, but never chopper. And so,
Oh.
the one that saved me on that one was the author of a romantic comedy.
Well, that's great, because when I was thinking of choppers, I was thinking of, the show MASH, where they referred to helicopters as choppers. So I
Right.
just,
Right. I don't know whether it's changed over the years because that was Army, but it was
yeah.
1950s. So I don't know, but I learned something.
Well, that's great. Now I learned something too, because I thought some called it a Hilo. I didn't realize that. So, but that's great. It's that you're learning something, and then you're sharing it in your story, and then when you do your research and people read it, even if it's fiction, a lot of stuff has to be credible, or people aren't going to read it. And
Right.
so I applaud that you do your research, and you went back and you made changes, and the fact that you're kind of like me, where you like to you learn something new all the time, and I try to learn something new every day. And and I share that with people if they care about it or not. But, it's interesting, I love learning. I think
Me
when you
too.
stop learning, you stop living, so.
I agree. I agree. I still consider myself a reader first and a writer second.
Yeah, I do both, and it's interesting. I've been disabled, my disease progressed over 20 years. So I had cut down to doing short stories, but then I decided just to switch my genre because I'm really enjoying the research and learning and, doing a deep dive of people that, they lived here. They should be remembered.
Right.
Um, and, sometimes the bloodline is gone. And recently I wrote an article, about this woman who, she was married, but in the 1800s, um, she wanted to open a school so that women could get comparable education. And, her mother did the same thing and was groundbreaking. But, if you did a search on her, uh, like a Google search, nothing came up. But now, if somebody did a search on her, wherever my articles are posted, they come up. So I'm trying to do that. So, I don't want to be forgotten, but I don't want to be, I want to be able to share these lives. People don't realize where they came from or
Right.
why things happen the way they do. And
Now that's great that you can bring it back to life.
that's what I've been trying to do. And, but, I go to cemeteries and I go around and I take photographs and, if I find something interesting, maybe somebody's name that I had never heard of in my research, I'll make a note of it and then I'll see if I can find out any information on them. So I really enjoy doing that. Um, so, let me see. I just lost my thought. That happens more than I care to admit. So with your, how far apart do you, write your books and get them published?
So the timeline of the series is usually a year's passed between the books, and that's mimics real life as well. So I'm usually writing about things that happened 3 years ago in my books. That just seems to be the timeline I'm on. But it takes me about a year. I'm one of those stereotypical military guys as far as having a routine being extremely important to me. So when I'm writing my books, I'll write 1,000 words a day, and I'll try to do that every day until I have, between 75 and 100,000 words. And of course, I've got, 6 kids and a wife, and so life sometimes gets in the way, but so that'll usually take me about 3.5 or 4 months to do that. But as you probably know, the rewriting and the editing, takes longer.
Yes, it does. Yeah. I kind of let I don't think about what I write. I just write it. And then when I have to stop and think, I'm like, that's when I have to walk away for a little while.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just write and write and write. And I've learned when I did my research for my first, nonfiction historical book that I did research, and then at the end I put it all together, but some of it could be confusing. So now I do it I have my book in sections. And so when I get information and the research, I put it in the document. And then, once it gets all compiled, then I'll be able to go over it and edit it. But I learned from, otherwise it would just be a lot of information that you have to weed
Right.
through to decide what you're going to put in your book and what's not and what's relevant and also what could be true and what could be false.
Do you use like Scrivener or any tool like that to have the research?
I just, I research on, I have several websites that I use. I also use, and it's going to be interesting, it's a Find a Grave website where you should be able to find pretty much where anyone who has passed is buried. Sometimes you can't, but I have found that I can get a lot of information about a person based off their obituary.
Hmm.
And it's interesting of what it can tell about a person. Sometimes it doesn't say anything, and then sometimes it tells a lot. And I've found information that was missing, or people that should be listed and they're not. So I'm considered a credible source there, so I can put in changes or make updates or make additions to that site, and I find that that's very interesting. Sometimes I do use Copilot when I can't find something that I'm looking for, and I can see if she can do a deep dive.
Right.
More than what I have, but I do use the public library, and I go to cemeteries, when I can, and I just, I find what I can online. I found a bunch of websites that are very credible and kind of interesting, because one, I can read archived newspapers, even the most like insignificant little newspaper like for a village or a town that doesn't exist anymore, that'll still come up if it reaches my search criteria. So
It sounds like you've got it wired.
I keep learning, and I do my best, and
That's great.
um and then it evolves as I try to put it together, because I never want my books to read like a textbook, you know.
Right.
I want to make them so they're truthful and also entertaining. And if there's a rumor to be squashed or something unknown, I put it in the book. So people know that, well, this is a rumor, and I just squashed that one.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
So, like you said, you try to set a time for, how many words per day to write. And obviously I know how life can get in the way. But, sometimes, sticking to something like that, I try to stick to a kind of a regimen myself, a schedule based off of what I have to do, because I have clients all the time that I help publish, or I edit for them, or do other promotions and stuff for them. And I also have to post my book reviews, so I kind of just set different times for what I'll be working on. So how does when you sit down to write, do you have, like, I'm going to say method, but maybe there's something that you need to have when you write? When I write, I always have music playing in the background, anything from Sinatra to Presley to Neil Diamond and Tchaikovsky. So it just depends on what I'm writing. So do you have anything that you need with you when you write? Do you need it to be absolutely quiet? Do you need noise in the background?
No, I can pretty much write in most places, but my preference, being a creature of habit, I sit at the dining room table, with my computer, and, it's usually, after I've gotten the kids down to the bus stop, I will come back and I'll sit down and do my 1,000 words. And I usually don't do much more than that. Like, I'm not one of those guys who I get into a groove and I'll write 4,000 or 5,000 words at a time. I just crank it out methodically, but without, any background music or anything like that. And I can pretty much write, while stuff is happening around me. The thing I didn't expect was that, you know, it only takes me an hour and a half to get through 1,000 words, but I guess when I pictured writing books, I thought that, you know, I would write a book, it would publish, I would enjoy that for a while, and then I'd write another one. But I'm with this indie publisher doing this series now, and so I've got the book that we're talking about that's coming out in December, but I'm got my book 6 already out with beta readers, and I'm fixing those corrections, and I'm working on the outline for book 7. So I didn't realize that there would be stuff happening with, you know, 3 books at a time. That was unexpected.
Yeah, it is. And some people don't realize, I've met a lot of debut authors who think, oh, I wrote a book, I published it, now everybody will read it. And I'm like, well, they have to know about it. So, you know, there's always, even if you're with a publisher or a publicist that does marketing for you, or you have somebody who helps you with promotions and marketing, you still have to do something yourself, even if it's just like word of mouth, telling people. I mean, social media is kind of like modern day word of mouth, but I still like, you know, talking to somebody and saying, hey, I read this book. It's really good. You should read it. You know, that kind of thing. So.
I'm a big fan. Nothing like what you do, but I do 14 or 15 reviews a month, for other people's, work, partly because I love to read, but I just also think it's just fun to get the opportunity to read other people's work.
That is awesome. And I'm glad that you write reviews, because it's very hard for me to get authors to write reviews for other people. But I think that's wonderful. I think every book deserves to be read, and every great book deserves to be read and shared. And also, you know, if you read a book, write a review. It's, you know, when we go shopping for something and do research, we might look at the, you know, how many reviews they have and if they're good or not. So do the same thing when reading a book. So.
Yeah, I agree.
But I really want to thank you for being on my show. And, you know, when you get to a point where you're going to publish book 6, let me know, and I'll have you on the show again, and we can talk about that release. And you can put me on your email speed dial.
That would be great. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it, and I really appreciate what you're doing for other authors as an author yourself.
Thank you.
That rising tide, you're lifting all the boats.
So I'm just going to close out the show. If you wish for you or your book to be on the show, go to amysbookshelfreviews.com/podcast. Thank you for listening. Be safe, be well, and always be kind. Tune in here again next week for another tantalizing discussion. Thank you for listening to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast.